Hello, class. It's your professor, Frank Henry Allah, and this is a continuation of the neighborhood and built environment. So, how do chemical exposures impact health? So, chemical exposures, like we're exposed to chemicals on a daily basis. Like we're always exposed. There are some safe ones and some harmful ones. It's really important to identify the harmful ones, right? So, when we look at exposures, the kind of chemicals you are exposed to, like, all right, so what determines you getting sick? It really it depends on the exposure. So, what is the chemical that you're being exposed to? The potency. So, how strong, how much of the chemical is needed for you to get sick? So, what does that threshold look like? So, what is that level of exposure that causes you to get sick? That's the potency. The dose is how much of the chemical you actually come in contact with. The length of exposure is how long you actually were in contact with it. The frequency is how often you are exposed to it. The route, how it is entering your body, skin, mouth, and so forth, through your smelling it. Sensitivity is the likelihood of getting sick based on your own personal health. So, how likely are you to get sick from doing something? Or do you have a strong immune system? What's going on? One of the chemicals that we're exposed to on the daily is pesticides. And any substance, pesticide is any substance used to kill, repel, or control certain forms of animals, or plants and so forth. And there's different types of ingredients in pesticides and pesticides. So you have active ingredients. This is what actually is killing the whatever you're trying to get rid of, whether it be rats or plants or weeds or whatever. That's the active ingredient. The inert ingredient, this is actually what makes it like usable, right? Allows the product to be stable. So if we want it into a liquid form, this is what we put in it. We put certain things in it to make it liquidy or to make it into powder form. So this is the inert ingredients. The FDA um doesn't requires that these things are added, right? But you don't have to disclose what is being added. But for active ingredients, that all has to be disclosed. Okay, that's really important. That has to be to disclose. But inert ingredients, that's confidential. The businesses don't have to disclose what they use to make it usable. But active ingredients, they have to disclose. All pesticides sold or used in the United States must be registered by the EPA based on scientific studies showing that the use without poison, without the use doesn't pose an unreasonable risk to people in the environment. There's different types of pesticides. So we have herbicides, the way it affects vegetation, insecticides, insects, fungicides, molds and so forth, disinfectants, bacteria, rodenticides to control mice and rats. People are exposed to low levels of pesticides residues through their diets due to use in agricultural chemicals and food production. So when we eat, we're always eating pesticides. The matters is the level, right? So depending on the particular pesticides, they can be toxic if swallowed, inhaled, or have direct contact with the skin. Direct contact with pesticides to the skin can lead to irritation and burns and so forth. If you breathe it in, you can have issues with breathing. And then if you ingest it, especially like carbamate and organophosphate pesticides, it actually acts as acetylcholine. Acetylcholine is something that's in our body, and this is our fight or flight response. So when we're ready to fight, right, we get into sweat and so forth. So acetylcholine is being released and we begin sweating, running noses, tearing our eyes, vomiting, diarrhea, and so forth. Here are some common pesticides. So we have 2,4-D, which is a common pesticide used in herbicides. And more than 70% that actually absorbed in 2,4-D actually leaves our body within 4 days. So it's not really that harmful for us. But if you ever experience irritation, inflammation, hives, eye exposure, could be more problematic. So there'd be different problems and so forth. But it's also used in sunscreen, insect repelling, and drinking alcohol also. Boric acid and borates or borates, these are what's commonly used to get rid of rodents like rats and mites and roaches and so forth. and it's considered one of the least toxic pesticides, right? So it's fairly safe. A lot of people put it around their house and stuff, who are having roach problems to combat roaches. But really, in order to really get a negative effect from it, like literally you have to drink it. Like you have to take a big concentration of it, and you have to drink it. And it causes like this intense red rash within 24 hours of exposure, and it could last up to 1 to 2 days. DEET, this is another common one. So DEET is a repellent used by almost 1/3 of US population. This is popular in sunscreens and so forth. And it's recommended that children do not use DEET. And also recommended that pregnant women, when pregnant mothers also should not use DEET, because DEET can cross the placenta and move from a mother to the unborn child and cause abnormal DEET also can also potentially cause production of abnormal sperm as well. So let's talk about regulating pesticides. So the issue with pesticides has been known for a while. you know Scientific community has already identified issues with pesticides, and so it wasn't until Rachel Carlson's book Silent Spring in 1962 launched an environmental movement against pesticides. So it really focused on DDT, and DDT was used in the fields. When the soldiers were in the fields, it was sprayed on the field so that it's to kill all the bugs and stuff, because it was, they're getting bit up and stuff. So DDT was used for that. It was actually at one point called the greatest discovery of World War II because of ability to kill insects that were spraying malaria and typhus. And it also was routinely sprayed in homes and on crops. But DDT is what's called an endocrine disruptor. So think about your hormones and stuff, production and things in your body. And after it affects reproduction, nervous system, and immune system, and may also cause cancer. Once again, the scientific community already knew about DDT or these harmful effects that Rachel Carlson highlighted in her book, but the book really put things on the map. And so it really got the buzz out. So in May 1963, President Kennedy actually had create a science advisory committee, issued a pesticides report which validated Carson's work. It led to more research and potential health hazards related to pesticides and urged more restraint in their widespread use in homes and fields. Here's an example of industrial waste. So polychlorinated biphenyls, BCBs, PCBs. PCBs are one of the most widely studied environmental contaminant. Not all pesticides, not a pesticide, but it enters through food contaminations. Usually through like the actual factories and stuff. It contaminates the food. PCB production halted in the US by 1977 under the Toxic Substance Control Act. A warehouse fire in Puerto Rico led to contamination of tuna meal used to feed fish and animals. And what happens? People eat that, they get sick. In Japan and China, they have the PCB Coca-Cola babies, and they got this term because the babies were being born with small with dark discoloration of their skin, and they develop developmental delays. Excuse me. Products made before 1970 that may contain PCBs include old fluorescent lighting fixtures and electrical devices. And also it's found mixed with paints as a cutting agent in the form that can be found in quantities on some federal buildings. BPA, biphenyl A, commonly used in plastic bottles and containers. It has potential of leaking in containers content and contaminating it. So traces is found entirely in every human in the US. The problem with BPA is it interferes with hormone production in the body. BPA mimics estrogen. So because it mimics estrogen, when you consume it, in young children, it can create early puberty in females, abnormalities in male and female sex organs. FDA approves FDA approves use and supports safety use in food containers and packaging, but they have outlawed it for baby bottles, sippy cups, and packing of infant formula. So one thing to recognize that with all these disorders, all these different toxins and stuff, children are constantly developing, right? So their cells are constantly regenerating and so forth and developing rapidly. And so anytime these chemicals and stuff can uh im- interact with a child, it will mess with its developmental processes. So FDA um uh, ban this when it comes to children. Commonly, this is found like in plastic bottles. So that's why they say you shouldn't drink bottles that are left in your car in the sun, or you shouldn't microwave your food in plastic. And that is it for this lecture.